Very good afternoon to all of you. I am Roma Khanna, Assistant Professor, Tirthankar Mahavir Institute of Management and Technology, Tirthankar Mahavir University. I welcome you all in the today's session on ecological succession. So, first of all, we should understand what is ecological succession. Ecological succession is the process of change in the species structure of any ecological community over a period of time. That means it refers to ecology of gradual change in the conditions of the environment, or we can better understand it as that it is the replacement of older species by the new species. This is an ever-containing phenomenon. We can also understand it as when in a particular community, in an orderly manner, these species are replaced, or there is a gradual change in the replacement of species of one species by the other, we call it to be a ecological succession. We can understand it like if there is a community and in that community the new species started coming and the older ones are, we can define it as the process of change in the community structure and functions with time through the modification in the physical environment, and ultimately a well stabilized ecosystem or a community is established, which is known as climax. The whole sequence of the communities which are transitory are known as serial stages, where the communities, when the communities are established for the first time, we call it to be a pioneer community. So understand the concept that first of all there is no community, then pioneer community, then through serial stages we reach to the climax. That means a full established community. So, it is evident that succession denotes the changes of the species composition in a community, which is generally associated with the sequence of changes in its structure as well as in its functional properties. The changes associated with the succession are progressive and directional. So, if we talk about the succession is a very systematic process. It occurs gradually, and the establishment of climax also takes place in a systematic manner, as there is a certain process which is followed, and then only the succession is established. The changes are directional and takes place with the function of time. With a period of time only, the pioneer community will establish, then there will be certain process or stages, and then after that the climax or a well established community or an ecosystem is established. Succession takes place due to the changes in the physical environment, and that changes are caused because the population is increasing day by day. The changes are predictable. See, sometimes the changes occurring are predictable, but sometimes they cannot be predicted. But changes occurring for a succession, they are predictable. Then, if we talk about ecological succession, it may start from a different areas. Depending upon where the area is, the researchers have named differently. Like hydra is an area which start from a watery area, like in a pond where the older species are replaced by the new species. Then mizar, where there is a place where there is an adequate moisture. So at that particular space when some species are replaced by the another species. Zira, where there is a situation or a condition of dry area. So there if the succession is taking place. Lithosphere, starting from a bare rock. Samosphere, yani succession is taking place on a sand. So depending upon where the succession is taking place or what the habitat is, succession takes place accordingly. But in every place succession is systematic in nature, it is directional in nature. There are several causes of succession. Till now we have understood that succession is the gradual replacement of the older species by the new species, or we can say that the reaching the pioneer stage, pioneer community, then through the certain stages reaching to a well stabilized community. But why that succession is taking place? That succession is taking place either due to natural factors, or human beings or any other organisms are responsible for the succession. Natural factors we can understand which are not under our control. These are the factors through which, like fire, flood, earthquake, any natural disaster, heavy rainfall, which may destroy a particular place, and at that particular place then the pioneer community, that means the establishment of species starting take place, and then a full established community is established, or a climax community is established. So the factors can be natural in nature or human beings. We human beings, we are deteriorating our environment for our own selfish reasons. We are causing harm to our natural environment. So because of our own particular reasons, for the sake of developmental activities, for the establishment of any development plans, what we are doing? We are deteriorating a particular area. We are demolishing a particular established community, and then after that demolishing, when that community starts establishing at a particular place, we call it succession. So we human beings are also one of the reasons for the ecological succession. When we talk about different types of succession, there are broadly two types of ecological succession according to the development. Primary succession is a succession, that means the succession is taking place at a place where initially there was no survival. And at that particular land where the succession is taking place. And when we talk about this secondary succession, when there is already a well-established plant community, it is demolished, it is destroyed, and then established again. We will understand these two in detail. First of all, let us go and understand the primary succession. It is the initial stage of the development of an ecosystem. It begins with the creation of community on such a location when there was no living organism. That location can be a new island, can be an area related to water, can be an area where volcanic flow. So succession when starts in an area where there is no life at all, though no living organisms at all. An example of an area in which a community has never lived before has been a lava or a rock from a volcano. This picture is depicting that might be a volcano has come, or the lava from the volcano has flowed to a particular island, and there, when there was no land, there was no life, there the succession started. That is the primary succession. Begins in a place without soil like sites of the volcanoes, landslide, flooding. It starts with the arrival of living things such as lichens. They do not need any soil to grow. When at certain places, they are known as pioneer species. So at those barren areas or the areas where there was no life, first of all lichens started growing. And then after lichens, small shrubs, herbs, shrubs, they started growing, and slowly a full-fledged plant community is established. When we talk about ecological succession, it is basically plant succession that I am talking about. So these are the pioneer species. Pioneer species means the first species which are established on any particular barren land or any area where there is no life or no other organism. So for the first time when any particular species or when a particular species of any lichens are established, they are known as the pioneer species. When any lichens die, they decompose and they add organic matter or nutrients to the soil. Some plants like mosses and ferns, they start growing, and when they start growing, these plants, they add more organic material to the soil. The soil layer thickens and grasses started growing, and slowly what happens? Plants started they establishing at a particular community, and finally a climax community, that means a full established community is established. When we talk about the primary succession, the shrubs and trees, I initially told you that what happened? Lichens came. When lichens die, they add nutrients to the soil. Mosses, certain plants like mosses and ferns started growing. Then shrubs and trees, they now survive into the soil in which the nutrients are added. So now what happened? Shrubs and herbs started growing. Certain small birds, insects, they are also responsible because they can now begin to move in, because there are now certain variety of plants which is now started available on that particular land. On a land that was bare earlier and where there was no life, now the life started growing over there. So now there can be insects, small birds and mammals, they can now begin to move in. These are the examples of primary succession. The picture shows that there are different areas, and in different areas which were barren, where there was no life initially, first of all lichens started growing, and then after lichens small mosses or ferns started growing, and then the shrubs, they started growing. That means the life started existing. This is an example which is showing that a volcanic eruption which has destroyed the ecosystem. Okay, there was no life. First of all, the organisms, there was no life in the first column. Then in the second column, it is depicting that first organisms are started appearing, like lichens I said, they started appearing. Then in the third, mosses and started appearing, some small grasses started appearing, and they take the roots and they increase the fertility of the soil. And finally trees, tree seedlings, small plants, they started growing. So this is how any community is established, that first of all there is a barren land, then lichens, then mosses and ferns, then small plants, and then the full-fledged community. Again an example which is showing that these are the pioneer species. That means initially there was a barren rock, then pioneer species, that means the species which appeared for the first time. Then they can be small, they can be lichens, they can be mosses, they can be small annual plants, they can be grasses, and then the intermediate species, small shrubs, grasses, which eventually started growing on a particular area, and then some shaded trees or big trees or plants, they started developing. So you can better understand it through this picture, that how from a particular barren area a full-fledged plant community is established. You can see step by step the gradual change of a species or the development of a particular area of a particular plant species. Now, so primary succession I hope is clear, and in short, primary succession is the development or the changes of an older species by the new one, but it starts at a place where there was no life. They occur and gradually a full established ecosystem or a plant community is established. Then comes the secondary succession. When there is re-establishment of a development of an ecosystem, understand, when there is already an ecosystem but it is being destroyed, after destroying again it is re-established, that is known as secondary succession. For example, this sort of establishment occurs due to the presence of seeds and organic material of the biological community in the soil. There was a full established ecosystem. It was destroyed either due to natural factor or due to human beings, and then at that particular place, due to migration of animals or birds, some pollen grains or seeds are fallen, and from there the species started establishing. So that is secondary succession. The disturbed area undergo a series of changes similar to the primary succession. These stages are similar to the primary succession. It also takes place gradually, in which smaller, faster growing species are gradually replaced by the larger and more stable species. Everything is same except that already an ecosystem was established and it is re-established. And when we talk about primary succession, there was no life at the place from where the succession took place. In secondary succession, it occurs on a surface where ecosystem previously existed. It is the process by which one community replaces the another community which was either partially or totally destroyed, might be due to any natural process. So when it was established already, suppose there is a pond, it was already a well established pond, but due to any natural factor it is now destroyed. So at that particular place, when again a re-establishment of a pond takes place, we call it to be a secondary succession. The circle of life of secondary succession. That disturbance occurs, there was a community, there was an ecosystem, but disturbance takes place, and then after disturbance maybe grasses started growing, which we call as wild grasses, or wild plants started growing, herbs or shrubs started growing, small trees, and finally full shaded trees or full long trees started growing, or they have now established, now they are established long trees. This is the stage of, this is the diagram which is depicting the secondary succession, in which initially it is shown that there was a forest, but maybe the forest, due to fire in the forest, that forest area is destroyed. But forest ecosystem of, in the forest a community of plant existed. But after that there was no life, no forest, no plant in the forest. Then pioneer species started establishing, one or two plant, grasses, mosses, they started establishing, and then slowly and slowly intermediate species, that means some grasses, shrubs, some small plants, they started establishing, and then finally a full-fledged plant communities again established in a particular area, we call it again today forest. So initially there was a forest, or rather I should say initially there was plant community, and then due to certain reason it was destroyed, and again it is then established. So we call it to be an example of secondary succession. This is a diagram which has its 8 stages, and it also shows that there are trees at a particular area, but maybe due to forest, in the second and third picture it is depicting that those forests they are complete now. Then at the 5th stage, some pioneer species, some species they are started coming. At the 6th stage, slowly and slowly development is taking place, and finally till as we see the picture 8, it is showing that a full-fledged ecosystem or plant community is established. Then, let us move on to an important aspect, that why does ecological succession occur? What are the reasons behind it? So we understood it either the natural factor or human beings, they are responsible for the occurring of the section of the ecological succession. But beyond it, we should also understand, because the succession occurs because it is a biological process. See, every plant, every organism, in spite of the natural destruction, they have their age, they have their life, and after that they deteriorate. So we require ecological succession because we organisms like we animals, human beings, we changes the structure of the soil, and the species community, they constantly changes over a period of time. That is why we require ecological succession. And succession occurs until and unless they reaches the final stage, which we call it to be a climax community. And what exactly is a climax community? A stable community. That is the final stage of ecological succession, when there is a full established plant community in a particular area. We call it to be a climax community. And these types of the community now remain same until unless they are disturbed. If they are disturbed, then, and if they are disturbed, after disturbed, they are demolished, again the ecological succession will take place. So this is the diagram which is depicting that there are different climax communities which can take place at different places. Whether it is primary succession or it is secondary succession, the process remains the same. First of all, there is nudation. That means the development succession begins at the development of the bare sites where there is no life. Whether there is no life from the starting, that will be a stage of primary succession. And if it is re-established, but then also when it started, then the nudation. Migration, when it refers to the stage of the arrivals of any propagules, which we studied like lichens. Invasion, establishment of initial growth of vegetation, which we call it pioneer species. Small grasses, small mosses, ferns, when they started growing. Competition, when there is a vegetation at a particular place, and that now vegetation is started growing, started spreading, and various species are present to compete. Now they are competing for what? They are competing for the sunlight, they are competing for the light, for the temperature, for the rainfall. So that stage is known as competition, and finally established climax community is formed. So whether it is primary succession or it is secondary succession, the stages remain the similar. Nudation, no, when the succession started at any bare place. Then migration, the arrival of any propagule. Then the invasion, started establishment of certain pioneer species. Competition, now the species are establishment of a climax community. So this was all about ecological succession, in which we discussed about the ecological succession, what it is. We discussed what are the two types of ecological succession. We discussed that what is the process of ecological succession, how primary succession takes place, how secondary succession takes place. Then we also discussed that what is the why we require ecological succession. Finally, last we studied the process of succession. So this was all about ecological succession. For any problem, you can contact me at this mail ID, and my contact number is mentioned. Thank you so much.